Alright, so picture this. Today, you're ready to be productive. You have a lot of work to get done, so you've blocked out the entire afternoon. You've picked out the perfect quiet spot, you've downloaded a focused music playlist, you're ready to buckle down because tonight you're hanging out with your friends, so if you get all this work done now, you're gonna be guilt-free and it's gonna feel so good. So you finish lunch, you grab your coffee, you sit down, you're ready to grind, and all of a sudden, food coma. It hits you like a brick wall. You drink your coffee, but it just doesn't seem to do anything. You spend the rest of the afternoon rereading the same paragraph and it just doesn't stick. And after so much attempted focus, you decide to rest your eyes for just 5 minutes. So much for productivity. So this exact scenario has happened to me way too many times, and I had to get to the bottom of it. So based on the symptoms, poor concentration, mental fatigue, brain fog, I assumed that the main problem was all in the brain. But after doing some research, it turns out that the brain is only half the picture. The other half is the body, more specifically, the gut. There's a reason why scientists refer to our gut as our second brain. Just like how our brain has a central nervous system, our gut has an enteric nervous system that helps regulate our metabolism. So here are a list of benefits that come with having a good metabolism. You get steady energy throughout the day, better memory, keeping your mood stable, and a lot of other perks. So what does this tell us? Well, first of all, Scooby snacks alone don't comprise a well-balanced meal. And secondly, nutrition plays a tremendous role in your ability to be productive. So let me give you an example of just how important nutrition is for our brains. On one end of the spectrum, you got Michael Phelps, the swimmer with the most Olympic medals in history. While competing, his muscles demand an absurd amount of energy. He eats up to 10,000 calories a day, which is 5 times the amount of food that we would normally eat. On the other end of the spectrum, you got people like you and me, who sit in a chair, motionless, and study or work for 10 hours a day. We're not using any muscles at all, so it doesn't really matter how we eat, right? Wrong. In 2018, Polar tracked chess grandmaster Mikhail Antipov and found that he had burned 560 calories in just 2 hours of just sitting and playing chess. This is literally what he did for 2 hours. And he burned 560 calories, which is how much Roger Federer would burn in an hour of playing tennis.
A chess player can burn up to 6,000 calories a day while playing in a tournament, 3 times what an average person consumes in a day.
So the brain is like a muscle. It burns energy, but it burns a lot more energy than you think. The brain is only 2% of our body weight, but it uses 25% of our total energy expenditure. And when you're performing highly demanding cognitive tasks like deep focus or memorization, you could be burning even more energy. And the fuel that the brain needs is glucose. So blood glucose, also known as blood sugar, is the key to stable energy levels. You want your glucose levels to be mostly stable throughout the day, and studies show that huge swings correlate with fatigue. When your levels go too low, that means that your body doesn't have enough fuel, so obviously you're gonna feel tired. But if your glucose levels go too high, you can also feel tired. I'm a full-time doctor, YouTuber, and tech entrepreneur, and my work demands brain power. So in order to optimize my productivity and perform at my best, I tracked my glucose levels for 30 days. I used this glucose monitor by Levels, and by the way, this is not a sponsored video, but I love this technology and I'd happily take a sponsorship. Anyway, that's a needle connected to the sensor, and I stuck it into my arm so that I could send myself live glucose tracking via Bluetooth to my phone. No, it didn't hurt at all, and it was totally worth it. This is what I found. So these graphs and lines are cool and all, but what does it mean for us? How do we use this data to help us make dietary decisions? So let's revisit the discussion about the dreaded food coma, aka the post-meal slump. Since I've been tracking my glucose, I can see what's actually happening when food coma hits me. You can see here that after lunch, my glucose spiked really high. Then what happened was that my body tried releasing insulin to bring the glucose down. But my body overcompensated and brought my glucose levels way down, even below where I started. And this is reactive hypoglycemia, which caused my food coma. So the cool thing is that Levels can track which specific foods cause me to go into a coma. So I know that heavy meals, especially with a lot of carbs or a lot of sugar, like this pasta lunch or this teriyaki chicken bowl, made me coma immediately afterwards. But here's where things get a little interesting. I also noticed that sometimes I was getting really sleepy after drinking coffee when I thought I should be getting more caffeinated. Well, it turns out that when I drink a sugary coffee or I add sugar to my coffee, especially in the form of condensed milk or something like chai tea syrup, then I'm sure to send myself to Spike City. So that's the big takeaway. We want to avoid these crazy ups and downs in our metabolism. So let's talk about meal composition, meaning how to balance your meals and even in what order you should eat things for better energy. The first thing I learned was not to eat plain carbs. You want to combine it with something. Eating a plain bowl of rice would do this to me, but eating rice with some protein or fats or fiber help balance it out. So this also means that you don't want to snack on just plain carbs. For example, when you're studying, if you want to snack on potato chips or crackers or something like that, then try adding a hummus or avocado dip to balance it out. The second thing I learned was to combine sugar with something else, because sugar itself will give me crazy spikes. So fruits are high in sugar, but eating fruit is better than eating something like candy because fruit naturally has fiber in it. Another trick is that if I'm making a smoothie, I want to avoid just putting fruit in it. I like to add a little bit of fiber in the form of spinach or kale, and a little bit of fat in the form of an avocado or almond butter. The third thing I learned was to not combine my carbs with caffeine. So what happens is when I eat a bunch of carbs now, like a bagel or hash browns, my blood glucose goes up from those carbs. But if I add coffee, what the coffee does is that it tells my body to release stored glucose, like from the pasta or the pizza that I ate yesterday. So now we have a double glucose effect from both the carbs I'm eating now and the caffeine releasing the carbs from yesterday. But here's where the combination can get deadly. Caffeine also ramps up adrenaline. When you're high on adrenaline, you're basically in fight or flight mode, and you'll try to burn all those carbs, all those calories as fast as you can, and this will send you to Spike City. Now let's shift gears and talk about how eating at different times in the day can affect your energy levels. So I avoid eating just plain carbs first thing in the morning. Why? Because my stomach is most likely empty, and eating plain sugar or carbs on an empty stomach spikes me like no other. And like we just talked about, you can exaggerate this effect by adding a morning cup of coffee. Now that I know this about my body, it's crazy to think about all those mornings where I had this for breakfast, or this, or this. Next up, eating late at night was also not a great idea for me. And I noticed this was especially true when my night was stressful. So stress increases your cortisol levels, which can mess with your metabolism. So for example, this is me chronically stressed, having gone 3 days without watching a single Ken Jeong video. Being stressed out at night hurts your overall energy levels because it can impact your quality of sleep. Just because you're in bed for 8 hours doesn't mean that all 8 of those hours were quality sleep. Here's a graph of my sleeping glucose after a relatively low stress day. Here's a graph of my sleeping glucose after a night shift working in the hospital. And here's a graph of my sleeping glucose after staying up till 2:30 a.m. studying. In both these situations, I'm losing sleep and my brain is working extra hard, guzzling up energy. So when your metabolism is already unhinged and you throw in sugary power drinks and snacks on top of this during late nights, you're asking for low energy levels the next day. And you definitely don't want to do this the night before a big exam. So I just wanted to say that these observations were made based on the 30 days of data that I've collected on just myself. The cool thing about metabolism is that all our bodies are different. My body might react one way to certain foods, but yours might react a completely different way. So if you have the time and the money, consider experimenting with your own body. See what foods work and what foods don't, and see how your focus and your energy levels are affected by your eating habits. Most of us aren't professional swimmers or basketball players, but we still need to watch the way that we eat. We are knowledge workers. Our brain is our weapon, and we gotta be proud and take care of our brains because knowledge work makes a huge impact.